I've always considered myself a very lucky person. And I think that, and as a believer too, I believe that it was God's way of preparing me for this job. Because when I was growing up, traditionally here in Malawi, in my tribe, the firstborn child was brought up by grandmother. My father was a policeman. Believed that as a policeman he wanted to bring up his one son and 4 daughters. My grandmother it didn't make sense to her because she was being deprived of this opportunity of bringing up a daughter, molding her into a future housewife in the village. So they struck a deal, and my father allowed my grandmother, to have me every Friday to Monday. So I would travel to the village every Friday. He would give me 1 shilling and 6 pence to take me home. And then I had a very good friend in the village, a very good friend of mine by the name of Chris. She would stand by the roadside and wait for me. She had never left that village in her life. But she would wait for me to hear about what it felt like to be in a bus, to be in town. And the first time I remember I spoke on the telephone, I went back home and told her how I could hear another voice at the other end. And she could tell me about the stories in the village. She's the one who taught me how to pick wild fruits, crabs, and things like that. Then she was going to the village school, I was going to the urban school, and she was brighter than me. We got to the end of the primary school. I was selected to go to one of the best schools. She was also selected to go to one of the best girls' schools in the country. She went 1 term. And I didn't realize until the 3rd term that she had dropped out. And I said, why? She said that my parents couldn't raise the £6 for me to go to school. And at that point, I was such a child myself, depending on my parents. There's no way I could help her raise the £6. But I've always been angry since that time. I've been angry all my life about how I failed to help her. And so I made up my mind that when I grow up, I'll send as many girls as possible to school. So when people see me run, my family says, when are you going to stop? I said, no, I can't stop. All these are creases. I didn't do it for her, but I'll continue doing it until my last day. When then I got married, I was 22. By 25, 26, I had 3 children in an abusive marriage. And then finally I said, no, I have to walk out. For the sake of my children, I have to go. But that was at a time when you didn't walk out of any marriage. You are an African woman, nothing is more painful that you can't stand. So you have to stay. It almost killed my mom. I said, no. Then if it is all African women, then I'm not an African woman, then I'm going. So I moved out, but I also made up my mind at that point that for as long as I live, I shall never tolerate abuse on a woman, especially from a husband. And the way you do it in Africa, because socially, you have to remain married. Not many people will take the route that I took. They will stay. And when I began to wonder what was happening to fellow women, I decided that maybe the best thing I can do is to empower them, to get to a point where they can say no, where they can make a decision, where they can have the courage to move out because they can look after themselves. So for me, when I talk about the importance of economic empowerment of women, it's because I tried it. Because when I left home, I immediately totally economically empowered myself. I started a business and grew my business. And when Richard Banda came to marry me again, it was on my terms. I actually laid out what I thought should happen. But then I've spent all my life, so thousands of women in this country will tell you, I'm here because Joyce Banda intervened. Then finally, when I was giving birth, I had 3 children already. So by the time I got married to Richard Banda, I decided to have a child between us. And so it was on the 23rd of January. I went to the hospital, I think 4 days earlier, and they found that my blood pressure was going up. I didn't understand the implications. And then I went in to have a test 4 days later. And the doctor says, we have to induce or we'll lose the baby. I didn't know that when your blood pressure goes up, you can lose the baby. Finally, they induced. And I thought it was over. And then half an hour later, I just collapsed. Because I was suffering what they call postnatal hemorrhage. Yeah, I was bleeding to death. Thank God my husband had a very good friend who was a gynecologist by the name of Dr. John Chipangwe. He went looking for him, he came, took me to theater, and saved my life. I got out of that hospital and I said, why did I leave? There must be a purpose. So I have spent my life now looking at those 3 areas. Getting as many girls as possible to school, fighting abuse against women. That is why when I became Minister of Gender in 2004, straight away I championed the passing of the Domestic Violence Bill. So at least my fellow women can have a tool that they can use to fight abuse. And then finally, that's why for me, saving another woman's life is part of my agenda. So I think those are the 3 that I can very quickly talk about that shaped my life and the decisions I made about my agenda.